I'm Marissa. I'm a lecturer at Singapore Polytechnic, and I am also a practicing therapist. I'm actually an emotional expressive arts therapist. So I've been doing this for the past 15 years. And today with me, I have Kay. Kay has been working with me not only in SP, but also in a nonprofit organization that I used to run some time ago. It was called Acting Up, and it was a nonprofit where we brought arts-based therapies to institutions and schools who usually cannot afford such services. So around about 15 years of experience working with youth and mental health. So today we are looking at managing emotions at the workplace. So very often, when we are at the workplace, we wonder, yeah, am I being too sensitive or not? Right? Is my boss is looking this way? Do you think he's looking at me? Am I not performing well enough? What must you be thinking, or what must you be thinking when they look at me that way? Or perhaps maybe we see our colleagues talking to each other. They don't know what they're whispering about, huh? Maybe talking about me. Can it be? But I did everything I'm supposed to do already, what? So like when we are in the office, sometimes depending on our levels of stress, depending on the context and the issues that we are facing at work and at home, it can create some difficulty for us in terms of how well we can manage our emotions. Sometimes we think we are managing very well, and then all of a sudden, we have some kind of breakdown. And the thing is, how do we even know when we're reaching burnout? So with that, let's begin managing emotions at the workplace. Right, please. Okay, so at this point, I would like to invite you to grab a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil or color pencil, crayons, anything that you have near you, just a paper and a pen. Okay? And while you are doing so, perhaps let me share a little bit more about how we will be conducting today's workshop. So today's workshop, we will be talking about managing emotions using a very different approach. It's a little bit of a multi-model approach where it will require some artwork on your end. Don't worry, you won't have to read. It's only for your own eyes to see. We will be exploring situations such as how you feel about drawings that see created, and perhaps we'll also look at some of the different coping methods. We'll also look at identifying any needs or resources. So how can we tell if I might need more support? How can I tell if somebody I work with needs some support? How do I identify this? What can I do to help? So these are some things that we'll be going through today. And it will involve just a little bit of drawing and just some participation. Now, during the participation, Kay will be activating what we call annotate. So you will see a little green pen turn up on your screen, and that means you will be able to participate by sharing your responses with us. Okay? Don't worry, it will remain anonymous. All right, let's have the next slide, please. Okay, so I've already told you a little bit about myself and Kay as well. So let's talk about the next slide. Okay. Now, this is the part where Kay will be activating what we call annotate. Please feel free to share your thoughts, all right? This is an art piece that was created by one of my clients who very kindly gave permission for me to share. When you look at this art piece, can I invite you to just type in using annotate your thoughts on what you see here? So it could be things like very scary or snake. What are some things that you see? What are some things that you think of? Let's give it some time and please share using snakes. Okay, Satan. Here we see a scary snake, serpent, Satan. All right. What else do we see? It's all right. Let's just take a bit more time. to share. What do we see here? We see snakes, we see scary snakes, we see a serpent, Satan. What else do we see? Right, while you guys are typing, Daniel, what do you see?
Okay, so other than snake, I do see a mask actually. So maybe an unknown mask, a mask, a Batman mask.
Oh,
So
interesting.
yeah, interesting. Maybe there was something that stands out as well. Again, it symbolizes unknown.
Mm.
Yeah, I guess that's one as well. Mm,
So you see a mask, you see something that says unknown, all right?
right.
We see a tree, okay, good. We see a blue
Yeah.
snake coil on a tree, very good. If you're not noticing, there's no wrong answer, so please feel free to keep adding on. Some of us see snakes, some of us see scary snakes, some of us see Satan, and then some of us very objectively see a blue snake coiled on a tree. You notice that? Well, some of us are interpreting what this could mean. Some of us are actually just saying, objectively, this is what I see. See, that's actually something that we go through at work every day. We can look at a particular situation and we could either say, oh, these yellow eyes really mean something evil. We could interpret it that way, right? Or it could be, there's a mask here, there's something going on. Doesn't make me feel very nice. It could be something at work happening that way as well, right? Somebody could be smiling at you and you could be going, what's the meaning behind that smile? Thinking something about me, is it? Don't dare to tell me, is it? You see, we could be having such interpretations. We could be having such thoughts, or someone could look at it very objectively and say, that's a blue snake on a tree. That's all there is to it. Nothing else to interpret, isn't it? So then this actually brings about, before we can even talk about managing our emotions at work, we need to first be aware whether what we are seeing and what we are observing or what we're experiencing, is it something objective or is it something that is triggering our interpretations of it? So in a while, we will learn that this is what we call automatic negative thoughts. So depending on our past experiences, okay, we could interpret this objectively, or we could say there's something going on. So perhaps let me share a little bit more about this art piece. Thank you for your responses so far. Let's share a bit more about this art piece. This is an art piece created by one of my clients, and she drew it because she actually went through something traumatic at work. So initially, she was very afraid to say anything about this. And for context, my work involves being an expressive arts therapist. So prior to joining Singapore Poly, I used to run private and group therapy sessions for working adults as well as for youth. So this was a young girl, she just started out in the workforce not too long ago, and something happened to her at work. So she shared that this snake looks the way it does because this is how she feels. She felt like there was somebody preying on her at work. She felt very unsafe. And initially, while she wasn't very clear about why she was feeling unsafe, she started to have panic attacks. So on her way to work, she would experience a panic attack where she would feel very short of breath. Like her breathing would go very short. She would go like, and she wouldn't know why. She just knew that she felt extremely unsafe at work. So when I asked her a little bit more, tell me about this art piece, tell me more about this feeling. And she said, it feels like someone's watching me. Someone with bad intention is watching me. So after a few sessions, it was revealed later that there was indeed a colleague in her workplace who would stare at her all the time. And one day, when she was alone in the office, he did take her aside and there was some inappropriate touching that happened to her. But she felt like because she was a superior, she wasn't allowed to say anything. And she didn't want to come across as needy. She didn't want to come across as incompetent. So she kept quiet about the situation and eventually slowly started to forget that it happened. But what happened as a result is she continued to feel afraid at work. And every time she tried to resist his advances, it was taken out on her actual work. So he would say things like, "You're not doing your best. You said that you're passionate about this job, but I don't see it." So this was actually a case of workplace bullying. So in this case, she couldn't exactly identify what it was she was feeling or what the situation was, or perhaps she was too overwhelmed at that point of time to process it. But it did affect even how much she trusted her own team. Whenever people came up to her and say, "Hey, I'll help you with this," she wouldn't trust them. When someone came near her, she would say, "No, no, 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 please stay away." Okay, so she actually became traumatized without realizing it. So this is an example of a more extreme case of workplace bullying that happened. And it had my client questioning, is something wrong really being done to me? Or did I not know how to manage my emotions properly at the office? So long story short would be, we do need to know what we are facing first before we know what emotion there is to manage. In fact, there are many, many types of what we call projection, isn't it? Have you ever had a bad day at work? You may not really know what was wrong with that day. And then you come home and the children maybe are making a lot of noise, and perhaps maybe the house is not cleaned, or maybe the helper did not do what she was supposed to do, and you find yourself letting go at home, and you find yourself going, "Why can't y'all just be quiet? I had such a long day. Why can't y'all just sit down? Cannot stop complaining, is it?" How often have we experienced things like that, where whatever frustrations we experience at work, we come home, unknowingly we might project it onto our family or the people that we live with. Similarly, if we are experiencing something at home, how often do we take it to work with us? So in order to manage the emotion, we must first acknowledge what the situation is. Let's see the next slide. All right. So first thing we need to do would be to identify where we feel the stress in your body. So for example, let's say something happened at work. Let's say, for example, we receive an email. Very often, emails are very triggering, right? I wonder if that's the same for everyone. Please give me a thumbs up if you feel like emails could be triggering. Just go hover over. Is it thumbs up or is it like? Yes, we raise our hands. That's right. Thank you. Emails. The minute we see emails, like, oh, you find your heart rate start to beat faster, right? And then while you're answering emails, even quite honestly, right, even as I'm sharing this webinar with you, I can see my emails popping up at the side of my screen, and I can feel my heart rate increasing. Yes. Emails can be a real trigger, but here's the thing, emails might trigger anxiety, but are the emails the cause of our anxiety? Maybe let's hear from you. Kay, what do you think? Emails, are they the trigger or are they the cause?
For me, honestly, they are the trigger. I know you're my boss and I should probably not be saying this, but we have a healthy relationship at work. So sometimes when I get emails or too many emails, I do feel overwhelmed. But I think that's pretty normal, right? Especially when you're in the middle of doing something. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Thank you for that. Do you find emails to be particularly triggering when you're already troubled by something else?
Actually, that's the only time when I feel like they are triggering. If they come in when I don't have that much of things to do or like there's nothing urgent for me to rush out, I think they're fine. Yeah,
Yes.
but when I have to handle like a lot of things at once and then like emails come in and I'm like, oh my God, no, I have to like tend to this too. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you. And perhaps maybe now let's hear from Daniel. What do you think? Sometimes do we take it out on the emails or the people that are emailing us?
Yeah. Sometimes I do that as well. I mean, you're in the middle of something very important, some email pops in, and it could be equally important, or you just want to get it done. I mean, so it just disturb your prioritizations, which is quite stressful.
Yeah.
And you just can't focus on doing things. I think that's the most troubling thing. And it's difficult to not read the emails, because for most of us, we live through this era where emails are so critical. And the worst is when you have bosses or clients who expect you to respond quickly, and that will add on to the anxiety as well.
That's right. Thank you so much for that, Daniel. And we're very aware that emails, they do trigger anxiety, but at the same time, right, we wonder, the person sending the email, right, that poor person doesn't actually know what we are doing at that moment. In fact, whoever is sending the email, they're thinking, oh, read it when you're ready, but just the stress of seeing it pop up, just the stress of hearing that sound, you feel something in your body. So maybe using this as an example, right, since so many of us do experience what I call email anxiety, when you receive an email or more than one email, where do you feel it the most? Can I invite you to annotate and type it over here? Or perhaps type it in the chat if you can. Where do you feel this anxiety the most? So for me, it's in my chest. We feel it in our heart, that's right. It could beat faster, true. Where else do we feel it? Maybe let's raise hand. Any of you, when you receive a lot of your face, that's right, you start to frown, you start to sigh, that's right. So we become aware, oh, initially my face is very relaxed, and after I start seeing email, I feel it on my face. I start to feel my heart rate quicken. I start to feel my breath quicken. Right? Maybe a show of hands, anybody feels it anywhere else? So like, for example, head. Some people start to get headaches. I don't know about you, but some people start to feel it on their shoulders. It start to ache and so on. Where else do we feel it? Stomach, exactly, that's right. You start to get a stomach ache, that's right. I think a lot of research has actually shown that anxiety and your physicality is very, very linked, isn't it? You get a stomach ache, or you start to feel gurgling, bubbling, and it may not be that you're hungry or having indigestion. It's the anxiety. Some of us feel nauseous before, presenting that. Or even nauseous just hearing the email ping go off. So this is what we call stress in the body. Okay? I can't sit still, I need to move. That's right. Actually, that's very good awareness when you know that, this is making me anxious. I can't sit here with this anxiety. I need to move. I need to do something. That goes into coping already. In fact, that is very good coping. Now let's take a few steps back and let's talk about what are we talking about where you are feeling it in your body, right? When we become aware that you're losing focus, you keep thinking about the email, you find it, even though you tell yourself, I need to focus, and then you're losing focus. How do we then become more aware of what we are feeling? So in order to manage the emotion, right, we must first identify. Let's take a step back. Let's take a moment. The email ping has just gone off. What am I feeling in my body first? So this is taking a moment to remove yourself from the situation and to identify physical symptoms. Now, why do I say that? We are not always aware of how we are feeling. Raise your hands if you agree with this statement. I can feel many, many emotions all at once, but I may not have the words to describe it. Okay. How many of us do agree with that? Thank you. So as we move along, we realize that, yeah, actually, sometimes we get very overwhelmed. An email ping might trigger an anxiety. But before that, I could be feeling very, very many things. So when I take a pause and I take a step back and I say, okay, what am I feeling right now? Where am I feeling it in my body? I'm feeling it in my chest. So what I'm describing to you now is how I typically experience anxiety. I normally start to feel my heartbeat a little bit faster. I feel like my breathing gets shallow. And sometimes, depending on how stressed I'm feeling at the moment, right, I get this sinking feeling as if you're being dropped from a roller coaster. And it's like the wind just, the breath is just taken out of you. So see, once again, this is on a scale. You are not always feeling 10 upon 10 stress. You are not always feeling 1 upon 10 stress. It fluctuates throughout the day. But what's important is pause, check in. How am I feeling? No words is okay. Physically, where am I feeling it? If I'm having a headache, if I'm frowning a lot, what is my body telling me? And then we make sense of the situation from there just by being mindful of our physical symptoms. Do my shoulders feel tight? Is my heart beating faster? What is my body telling me? What does this indicate? And then if it's difficult to think or talk about emotions, right? Then we ask ourselves a very simple question. What does my body need me to do now? What does my body need from me to stop the heart beating so fast? What does my body need from me to stop my stomach from churning? So it could be taking time out, taking 5 minutes to go to the toilet or go for a walk and come back to face what you need to. Now, you see, it may not seem like you're managing the emotion per se, but then emotions are very difficult. It's a very tricky bugger, emotions. Emotions tend to creep up on you when we ignore them, right? And then it gets worse later on. So then how do we nip it in the bud? Your body. Listen to your body. Okay? If a situation is making your heart race, not in a good way, not in like you see Korean oppa, very handsome heart race kind of way, but heart racing in a way where I don't like this doesn't feel right. Your body is the best indication on what you should do. And it is when we don't listen to our body and we force ourselves to move forward, that is when anxiety attacks happen, right? Staying in a situation, let's say you're in a conversation with some colleagues. Let's say they are talking about deadlines, and you feel like you are nowhere near meeting any of these deadlines. In fact, you wonder if you're lagging behind, but these are not things that you say. These are things that you feel. These are things that you're thinking about. But because you're a professional, you don't say it out loud. You don't confide in anybody about these feelings. So the conversation somehow is making your heart race. You force yourself to say, because I am a professional. The conversation takes her and asks, so what have you been doing about this? You find that not only is your heart beating faster, your stomach starts to turn, and your breath is shallow. And you tell yourself, I'll manage this because I am a professional. You try and offer an explanation and say, oh, but that doesn't explain this and that. And you find that the conversation seems to be triggering even more physical reactions. You find that it's even harder to breathe now. But no, still you stay because why? You are a professional. What happens after that? You might have an anxiety attack. Okay? You could experience and you may not know where it comes from, but because you were ignoring all the physical symptoms, it leads to a panic attack because you haven't attended to the physical stresses in your body. So what should we do in situations like that? We are not experts all the time on our emotions. In fact, I wonder if you agree. It's very easy to kind of tell how another person is feeling. Like, for example, on an everyday basis, I can tell Kay, hey, girl, you don't look right. I think you look very tired. But I can't exactly identify the same for myself. I can tell her to take care, but I don't know when to tell myself to take care. In fact, I wonder how many of us experience that. Easy to see in other people, not easy to see in ourselves. Let me check with Daniel. Daniel, will the slides be provided after this?
We will be sharing the recording. The slides probably not, but the recording will be shared.
Thank you for that, Daniel. Okay. All right. So these are eventually what could lead to an anxiety or panic attack. And that's where we go, oh, I don't know what happened. I just suddenly felt like I couldn't breathe. It's actually not sudden at all. Your body has been giving you these symptoms. So the first thing that we write down today that we want to know is, how do I cope with my emotions? By listening to your body. So that's the first thing. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. By the way, if you have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A box, which we will answer at the end of today's sharing. Okay. All right, we want to get a sense from everybody the kind of stresses that we're going through. So if you see the different emoticons here, please click on them so that we know who you are in that sense. Okay. So perhaps you are at the start of your career, you feel very unsure. Everyone around you seems to know what they're doing, and then you're not sure no matter what you do, you're not sure if you're enough. Okay, you worry that you won't reach your career goals in time. So for example, by 30, I must be at least a manager. I'm very worried I won't reach that goal by then. And you're just starting out, you're probably very young. All right, we have some of you. All right, let's see any more. Thank you. Okay, and I wonder if what was just described is something that you can relate to. You start off, in fact, all of us could start a new job at the same time, but depending on where we are in our stage of life, we could experience these stresses very differently. So a young person might probably say, yeah, I'm really worried about what's going to happen. I don't know if I'll meet all the expectations in time. Now, perhaps some of us, for those who are thumbs up, please do continue to share with us whether you're thumbs up or a heart shape or a party hat. Those with the thumbs up, like me, you are probably what we call the sandwich generation. So we've already been in the workforce for a few years. We're probably juggling several responsibilities. At work, you could be sandwiched between the people you work for and the people who work for you. That's one level of sandwich, right? And then at home, we could be sandwiched between many other things, such as sandwich between your children's needs and your parents' needs. So these are people who are juggling several responsibilities, bills, aging parents, children, and we wonder, how do I cope? How do I handle everybody's demands and expectations? There doesn't seem to be any time to look after myself. So this is people in the thumbs up generation. Now let's look at the heart generation. We're looking at people who are facing retirement soon. Now, you see, there's this misconception that just because we're retiring doesn't mean that you can't still contribute. Now, this stress is very different. On the one hand, people in the sandwich generation or the thumbs up generation might be going through something extremely overwhelming. For example, needing to deliver many projects or deadlines within a certain timeline, yet you have to still cater to everyone's needs. That's one kind of stress. But a person in the heart-shaped generation could face something different, such as being left out of projects. Hey, you're gonna retire already lah. Just take it easy lah. Go and look after your grandkids lah. What for you work so hard? But maybe you feel like you can still contribute. Maybe you feel like, oh no, what lies ahead of me then? I mean, life doesn't end at retirement, right? What do I do after that? How can I still meaningfully contribute? So as you can see, 3 different generations, 3 very different sources, very different expressions of stress and anxiety. So the first thing that we do today, let's identify where we are. There could be very varying and different issues that we're going through, but it helps to identify which stage we're at. And now, let's think about whatever it is we're going through. Let's take a pause and know that whatever you're feeling, you do not need to describe it. You do not need to explain it. Regardless of where the pressure comes from, whether it's from the party hat, thumbs up, or the heart generation, wherever it comes from, I'd like you to identify for yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. How intense are you experiencing this? 1 would be, nah, I'm not stressed at all, not feeling anything at all. 10 would be maximum stress and anxiety that you're actually worried that, you're worried for your own emotional safety. Okay? You do not need to share this with me. Let's identify for yourself now, on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you fit? There's no specific emotion, but whatever it is that you're feeling right now, where are you on a scale of 1 to 10? All right. So let's just take a moment, identify that number. Okay. Could you give me a thumbs up or a hands up to show that you've already identified the number? Thank you. All right. So when we talk about, now that you've identified the number, let's say, for example, I have identified whatever it is I'm feeling. I identify the intensity as 6 upon 10. It's a little above average. So the first question I'd like to ask you, and I'd like to invite you to perhaps journal and write down for yourself, what makes it, in my case, what makes it a 6 and not a 5? Right? What makes it, I mean, it could be worse, right? What makes it a 6 and not 7? It could be worse, right? So what do I have? What resources do I have for myself that prevent me from going further up the scale? What makes it a 6 and not a 7? So let's just take some time to reflect on that. Write it down if you need to. What makes it not higher than what it is? Okay, so let's take some time to think about that. And now let's talk about how can we reduce this feeling that we don't like, right? How can we reduce it by one number? So for example, in my case, it's a 6 upon 10. Whenever we say, I want to get better straight away, we're talking about dropping from 6 to 1. That's actually very stressful, That's putting an expectation on yourself to be better, which then causes even more anxiety, isn't it? So in this case, what we want to do is, if I'm a 6 upon 10, what do I need to bring that feeling down just one notch to a 5? What do I need? So for example, do I need to have an open conversation with my immediate reporting officer? Do I need to have the support of my family? Do I need to have a conversation with my husband about the care of the children? Do I need to have a conversation with my boyfriend about, where we're going in our life? Do I need to talk to somebody about what happens after retirement? So how do we move that number down by 1? So what we've just done here is what we call scaling. And scaling is part of what we call solution-focused therapy. So we're not doing therapy here. And we're not doing therapy here, but this is something very simple, a very simple coping that you can do for yourself to help transfer emotional thought into rational thought. Because when I ask myself, yeah, it could be worse. Why is it not worse? Then you're talking about your resources, what you have to help yourself. When we ask, what can I do to make it lower? We're asking, what do I need? What kind of support do I need? All right. Thank you. So let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so this is an exercise that I hope you will be able to do in your own time. And we have included it in the resource package that we put together for you. So if you're feeling okay to do this now, let's think about this. If your thought and your feelings look like something, what would it look like? So typically when I do this with my clients, I usually encourage them to start with a dot on the paper and just freely draw and freely scribble. And it doesn't matter what comes out. Even if it's a stick man or if it's like just random doodles, that is how you're feeling right now. Whatever you're drawing or doodling or creating right now, as I'm talking, that's how you're feeling at the moment. And how you feel is valid, and how you feel is real. So take a few moments, doodle this a little bit, and take some time to have a look. If your feelings look like something, what you just doodle is what it looks like. So I'll take a pause at this moment. Daniel, did you manage to doodle something?
I didn't, but I was looking at the picture itself, and if I were to do something, probably something more peaceful, maybe a scenery. Okay, I mean that's what is in my thought at this point in time, and yeah, something of that nature. I would say.
Thank you for that. In fact, when we create art, right, whether we're doodling or we're writing, right, it could be how we're feeling at the moment, or it could be what we want to feel. It could be now I'm not feeling peaceful, but I want to feel peaceful. Bring it back to the scaling. What can I do to increase that peacefulness? How peaceful do I feel right now? How do I increase? So it's kind of like having this little meter or scale in your mind. When you're aware of your emotion, whether or not it has a name, we can mentally scale it here and there. Perhaps let's look at the next picture first. And this was an example that Kay created. And I told her to just create anything, start with a dot and just go. And apparently this is what Kay's feelings look like. Kay, do you feel comfortable sharing a little bit about this?
Yeah, sure. So this was I did this last Thursday when we were doing like the dry run for this, right? So on that Thursday, Marissa and I were both sick. And also we had like 7 hours of back-to-back meetings during that day. So I guess this represents exhaustion to me. And the teardrop is because when I'm really tired, I tend to cry. Yeah. But the eyes are still open because like I'm still like going, you know, it's not closed. It means that like I haven't given up.
Thank you for that. And you know, in my training, right, we are taught never to interpret another person's artwork, because when we do that, we're putting words in their mouth. In fact, when Kay was sharing, right, I thought it was really powerful when he said, I'm still going. Not, we can interpret this in one way, but when we actually hear from the source, we know, oh, that's what it means. It's actually a positive thing. So thank you for that. And I wonder, for all of you watching at home or at work now, if you were to create what your feelings look like, what would it look like? How would you explain it to yourself? And what do we come to know about it? So this is actually one way that we can cope with our emotions, simply by looking at what it looks like. How often do we say, I'm feeling something? But it's so vague, right? I'm feeling something, especially after maybe something could have happened at work. And then it's so vague. What is it that I'm feeling? I don't know. Sometimes it's like a general feeling of, yeah, I'm just not good enough, or maybe I'm not an effective leader, or maybe I'm not doing enough. But it may not actually be factual. How can we process our emotions for ourselves? One way is by creating art, drawing, and this is what the feeling actually looks like. For myself, what I do is that I will play the guitar. How I feel really reflects in the way that I play. The same song can be played in many, many different ways. So that is one way of not only letting out what we're feeling, it also helps us to manage it. Why? Because it makes your feelings concrete. It means that it's actually real now. And now that you see it or you hear it, we can do something about it. So let's have a look at the next slide. Okay, so perhaps let me share a little bit about creating artwork and the relation it has to managing your emotions. When we create artwork, or even let's say you're very, very stressed at work and you just start to doodle, or you just start to write something, or even just create something like that, it's valid. It is valid. It's not nonsense, because that's how you're feeling at the moment. So the questions you ask yourself is, when you look at that scribble, you ask yourself, what bothers you about it? Do I like what I've just created? What bothers me about this? So let me share a bit about this first piece of artwork that you see here. This first piece of artwork was actually created by my own mother. And I asked her the same question. Does anything bother you about what you just created? And she said, what bothers me about what I created is that I'm standing alone. I'm not alone. How come I represented myself alone? So then that started her thought process and conversation about the kind of support she needs. So when we ask ourselves such questions, okay, I created this doodle and it's really, really ugly. What do I not like about it? We're not asking about whether it's artistically pretty or not. We're asking about what doesn't sit well with you. Now, when we look at our art piece, we might also want to find out, okay, there are things about what I created that bothers me, but what interests you about what you created as well? What intrigues you? So if you look at the second art piece, it was created by one of my youth who lives with depression, and she very kindly agreed to share her artwork with everyone. And when I asked her, what intrigued you? What about your art piece? She said, I didn't expect that there would be pastel colors. She said, I've always identified as somebody who is depressed. I don't know why I started to use pink. I never use pink. I don't understand how that happened. So maybe, and this is what she said, maybe depression isn't the only thing present in me. Maybe there's something else. I don't know what it is yet, but something is there. So ask yourself, what intrigues you about what you created? You learn something about yourself as well. Now, the third question is, what would you like to change? If I don't like what I've created, is there something in the art piece or this music that I want to change that makes it fit better for me? Is there something about my situation that I don't like that I want to change and is within my power to change that helps it sit properly with me? So the third art piece, also created by another one of my clients, initially there weren't any words in it. So initially it was just the trees in the night sky. And when I asked her, is there anything that you'd like to change about it? She said, no, but I'd like to change the way I look at it. And that's when she wrote the words, the darkness that turned into something beautiful. And when she elaborated on it, she said, the dark times are still here. I still feel very dark and depressed. But darkness has its beauty as well, isn't it? There's something beautiful in the night sky. I wonder what that beauty is going to be. So these are just some examples of art pieces and how we use artwork to process our emotions. You don't need to be an art therapist yourself for yourself. What bothers you? What interests or intrigues you? What would you like to change? These help to transfer emotions into rational thought, and therefore you can then move forward to understand, okay, what's the next step that I need to do? All right, let's see the next slide. So this uncomfortable feeling that you have, remember I was saying, on the scale of 1 to 10, this feeling that, I don't know, is it people talking about me? Is it I'm not performing well enough? We're not quite sure what it is, but it just doesn't feel nice. Maybe it's a feeling of, oh, I really don't want to go into work today, but you don't know why. This is what we call cognitive dissonance. What is that? Cognitive dissonance really is the mental discomfort that occurs when there's conflicting beliefs. So for example, maybe it is my value and my belief that we treat everybody with respect. Therefore, when we communicate with people, it should always be with love and compassion. So for example, let's say somebody in my team has not done something correctly. For me, it is my value that I would not shame the person in public, right? Seems like common sense, right? But apparently it does happen at the workplace where people feel shamed or slighted because of a very public telling off. So it is in my value that if someone does something not quite right, I would not address it publicly, but I would say I recognize the effort that you've put in for this and that. However, there's this one part that could be improved. So that's how I feel proper communication should be. But just because that's my value, it doesn't mean that all around me, it doesn't mean that other people agree with that. Perhaps there are people we work with that are more like nip it in the bud. That's wrong. What for you get emotional about it? Wrong means wrong, it's an objective thing, right? So see difference between seeing a mask and seeing a snake on a tree. One is objective. Let's just talk about what it is. Another considers the emotion and feeling behind it. So cognitive dissonance happens when there is a clash in our values or we're treated in a way that we did not agree with. Okay? So for example, I need to focus on this big project at work, but I'm also neglecting my family. That's a conflict, that's a clash, isn't it? You want clear boundaries, but my boss keeps texting me after hours. But if I say I'm not okay with it, right, then that affects the boss relationship with me. That is a clash of values. And that feeling Uncomfortable feeling, that's cognitive dissonance. So one thing we can do each day is identify, firstly, in our body. Remember, we were talking about our body first, right? Where am I feeling it in my body? And recognize that what we're feeling is cognitive dissonance. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So what happens when we have cognitive dissonance and we ignore it? Like it's there, but I tell myself I'm a professional. Let's just move on with it. Let's ignore it. What cognitive dissonance can lead to if we don't manage it is what we call automatic negative thoughts and faulty beliefs. So if we don't acknowledge that we have these feelings, if we don't acknowledge that where this cognitive dissonance comes from, right, then we get very inaccurate interpretations in our mind. So for example, my boss could be staring at me, or maybe he may not even be staring at me. My boss may be staring in my general direction, right, because maybe the scenery behind me is very nice, or maybe admiring my outfit for the day. But because I feel uncomfortable, you don't stare at people like that, right? If I don't address the discomfort that I have, then I start to have automatic thoughts such as, I think boss is staring at me because maybe I didn't do something right. I think boss is staring at me because maybe did I miss a deadline? And then we start to panic, right? And then that brings on the anxiety. And then that leads to what we call faulty beliefs. I'm always doing things wrong. Why can't I get anything right? Every time boss wants something, I don't seem to be able to do the right thing. Okay, so these are what we call faulty beliefs, and it's called faulty because it's not true. It is created based on the emotion that you're feeling at the moment, and because we haven't expressed it or we haven't processed it properly, we are reacting on an emotion. We're not rational right then. So the faulty beliefs can get very, very overwhelming. In fact, for some of us, it could be so overwhelming that even things that are not even related to the situation, it could come up. So like, even when I was young, also I was very blur. I'm not surprised that the boss can't stand me anymore. Your boss never said that, right? But it's in your head. So you see, before we can even manage the emotion, we need to know whether the emotion that we are experiencing is accurate in the first place. Okay. So let's go on to the next slide. So when we talk about faulty beliefs, what exactly are they? They are self-defeating thoughts, self-defeating negative views that you hold around yourself and the world around you. And you're probably asking, does everybody have faulty beliefs? I suppose so. However, we have it in different levels. So let's say a person who has gone through a lot of blame when they were young, let's say, or went through some trauma when they were young, they might have more faulty beliefs, and the automatic negative thoughts come on a lot faster. Why? Because when you were young, they could have been conditioned in such a way. So for example, when I used to be in school, right, it was actually very common for our teachers to say things like, why are you so slow? Why are you so slow? Why are you so dumb? It used to be okay for them to say things like that. So now, as I become an adult, if I don't catch myself, right, I find myself saying the same thing. Like, for example, somebody might be rushing me with an email for something, and the first thought that comes to my mind is, why are you so slow? Why couldn't you have done this faster? Well, perhaps it may not even have been my fault, but I straight away assume. So faulty beliefs is rooted in your experiences. The more your experiences have given you reason to believe these faulty beliefs, the more it tends to happen. And this is very closely linked to what we call automatic negative thoughts. So these are the mental functions that occur without your consciousness. So when I say, you're so slow, you're telling yourself that, right? That it doesn't even go through a thought process. You just straight away think that. That's the automatic negative thought. And the automatic negative thought is linked to your faulty belief. Okay, and very often the voice that you hear, which is an automatic negative thought, is that faulty belief that you were led to believe since you were young from your experiences. Okay, so I guess then the question is, oh no, why does this happen? How does this happen? Let's see how it happens. Okay, so it is not as simple as ABC. When we talk about ABC, A refers to the activating event, B refers to the belief, and C refers to the consequence. Okay, so we believe that this framework explains how your automatic negative thoughts come about when they trigger your faulty beliefs. So let's look at an activating event first. Let's say, okay, ayo, boss suddenly dropped a deadline on me, but tonight is also my child's concert. Now I have to tell my child I can't be there. Now, this is the activating event, the situation. Now, this situation, right, may not necessarily be a cause. This could be simply a trigger. Okay, so what happens is this trigger, suddenly got deadline, but tonight is also my child's concert. Now, I want to be there for my child. I cannot. There's a dilemma there. That leads me to the belief. Let's see. I am a bad parent. Now, question, I am a bad parent. Is this an automatic negative thought? Perhaps. Where did it come from? Could it be perhaps our parents or grandparents, or in-laws saying things like, a parent should always prioritize the child first. Working should come second for a woman. See, these are beliefs that we grew up with, especially as Asians, isn't it? So when we talk about the belief, like, I'm a bad parent, this is your belief, and it could be you have this belief because of the negative automatic thought. If I don't see to my child one time, I am a bad parent. Okay, so that's belief. So what does that lead to? Let's look at the consequence. It leads to, okay, I'll quit my job. I'll quit my job and I can be there for my child all the time. But the thing is that this consequence, right, also comes with another consequence, right? There will be financial constraints. You're both working parents now, and if you were to say, okay, I don't work anymore, then that will bring about financial burden. So this is an example of ABC showing our thought process and how it results in some of our actions when we act on impulse. So in this case, if this person acts on impulsivity and says that, I cannot, why got clapping hands? If they say, I cannot, I cannot be in this job anymore because why? My child is going to lose trust and faith in me. People are going to say I'm a bad parent. Now, because if we act on impulse and then we straight away go into the consequence of, okay, I'll quit my job, settle this problem now, then that leads to more issues, right? So what we need to do is, before we can even talk about regulating your emotions, let's talk about whether you know your ABC first. So for example, email ping. Can that be an activating factor? What do you think? Let's thumbs up or hands up if we agree. Can the email sound be an activating factor? Possible, right? What is the belief that is associated with the email ping? Okay, what do you think? When we hear ping, ping, ping.
For me, it feels like I'm not doing work fast enough, even though that's not rational, right?
That's right. And because we have a belief that I should be efficient, right? So because I have the belief that I'm efficient, this negative belief would be, I'm not doing things fast enough. I'm not efficient enough. That's why they have to rush me via email. Even though we haven't read the email yet, straight away that belief comes about. So what is the consequence? I open my email straight away and I start to address straight away what is happening, right? But what happens? Whatever I'm doing in that moment, I'm putting it on the back burner as well, right? Which causes yet another problem. So the point of this is, let's be aware of what your ABCs are. It is as simple as ABC in that sense. So what kind of empowerment does it give us by knowing our ABC? It helps us to stop those automatic negative thoughts. You stop yourself at the belief part and say, hey, this belief that I'm not responding fast enough, is that a fact? We need to ask ourselves that. So was this the best decision? Was it rational? Okay, so we need to ask ourselves these things. Okay, so in other words, when we set boundaries, it's so easy for us to say, must set boundaries. Setting boundaries could be many things. It's more than just saying no. It's more than just turning off your phone at the end of the workday. It's not just that actually. You could turn off your phone, but yet your mind is still going like, no, I should check my work texts, right? You still have that. So setting boundaries is not so simple as just saying no. We need to first identify our points of cognitive dissonance at work and not to ignore them. So for example, it's asking yourself this difficult question. What am I worried about not answering that text immediately? What am I worried might happen to me? What am I worried about how people might view me if I don't respond straight away? Then, is that on the person who texts me? Is that his or her fault? Or is it my perception that needs to change? So when we say setting boundaries, right, that's something that we need to do for ourselves. You see, as much as we try to create boundaries for other people, ultimately we can't change other people, right? And we cannot regulate our emotions based on how other people behave. I can always tell my boss, can you not text me after 7 p.m. every day? Maybe there are times when they try, there are times when they can't. But we cannot say it's my boss's fault, right? However, at what point do we take ownership of that and say, I exercise this choice that from 7 p.m. onwards, that's my time with my children, that's my time with my boyfriend or girlfriend, that's my me time because I am important. Now, if you keep crossing your own boundaries, then you're telling other people it's okay for you to cross mine. Does that make sense? Right? So sometimes it's in the way we treat ourselves that send the message to other people. So for example, for myself, right, this was a very big struggle for me to do. I actually have 2 phones. One phone is simply for my family and my friends, people I care about. And another phone is just for work. And I know the struggle. To turn that phone off at 7 p.m. every day, I actually had a panic attack the first few times. Because I start wondering, okay, the phone is off. Maybe nobody is bothering me. But the fact that it was turned off, I had to really like, okay, it's okay. It's okay to have it off. But it gets easier each day. Right? Don't cross your own boundaries. Because when you do, you're telling other people that they can. Be mindful of your body symptoms, okay, that indicate dissonance. So when you have migraines, you start to have migraine, you start to have headache, upset stomach, low motivation, quickening heart rate, things like that, please don't ignore it. Okay? Because when we ignore it, that's where we are saying you don't matter. And when you show yourself that you don't matter, we're sending the same message as well. So it's a little bit more complicated, isn't it? It's more than just, I think when we sign up for this course, we're probably thinking, okay, how to manage my emotions, deep breathing. Yes, that's part of it. But it's also the messages that you send yourself and how you treat yourself, how much kindness you treat yourself with that sets the clear boundaries. Okay, let's move forward. Okay, so you might wonder, okay, so these automatic negative thoughts, they're negative, right? What can I do about it? In all honesty, right, it's quite difficult to undo, right? It's tough to undo something that you've learned for a long time. If I've always been told I'm slow, that's something very difficult to undo. Now, what we want to do is positively reframe things. Okay? So what it means is that we're not changing the situation, but we are shifting our mindset. Okay? So see, there's a difference between I can say the same sentence, but the way I say it in my head, right, can be very different. So for example, boss could tell me something like, good work, right? Simple, right? Good work. Now, the automatic thoughts in my head, right? It sounds like that, okay? Good work. I see that's a very different meaning, right? It's very sarcastic, right? When we insert that meaning, that's not positive reframing. That's really allowing the automatic negative thoughts to come in. Right? And then it leads us to a very inaccurate emotion. Now, when we say positive reframing, it means that we look at the same situation in a different way. So, cognitive reframing is something that we do to kind of fight what we call a distorted thinking. So let's see a little bit more about what this means. Okay, so to better explain positive reframing, let's look at the ABC again. Let's look at the activating event. Now, here's the thing, your activating event never changes, right? Because we cannot determine how other people will act, right? We don't have control over that. When we manage our emotions, right, we need to know what we have control over, and that's ourselves. So the activating event, boss suddenly dropped deadline on me. Child's concert is tonight. Now I have to tell my child that I can't be there. That's the activating event. It will not change. That's a fact. It's objective. But how the belief that we choose to have from it, that's within our control. Let's see the belief. Right? Initially, the belief was, I'm a bad parent, simple as that. But when we positively reframe, we inculcate or we think about a different belief. So there are times when I am unable to fulfill my duties to my child, right? But there have been times where I've been there for everything else. One time does not make me a bad parent. I can accept support from my spouse. Okay, so what we are doing is we need to find evidence to combat this negative belief, to combat the automatic negative thought. So in this case, the automatic negative thought is you are a bad parent because you cannot be there this one time. But positive reframing means that all the other times I've been there for my child, one time not being there, my child is not going to not love me, right? My child is not going to say I'm a bad mother. In fact, when I come home, my child is probably going to welcome me with a very big hug. Right? So yes, of course we feel bad, and of course we apologize to our child for not being able to be there. But while we are not happy about that situation, it does not make us a bad parent. Okay? So the belief is reframed. Now, what then happens when we're able to reframe our situation? The consequence changes. Let's look at the consequence. The consequence could be, rather than impulsively quitting the job to be there for the child, right, causing more financial problems, the consequence changes. It could be, I stay in my job, but I set my boundaries clearly. Right? And coming back to what we were talking about earlier, setting the boundaries for yourself. Okay? Also, so that it perpetuates to the people around us. So the consequence is I stay in my job, I keep my boundaries. Now, this may include foregoing any promotion opportunities. However, I get to be there more for my child. So the consequence could be a give or take. You know, I may not be the best performing person at work, but the give or take, what is it I can live with? What is it I can live without? Can I live without that promotion? If it's a can, because my child has priority, that's my choice. So that's exercising your sense of empowerment for yourself. So this is what we call reframing, changing that negative belief into something positive or workable, and then your consequences change. So if we come back to what we were talking about earlier, activating event, your email sure ring one. There will never be a day where your emails don't go off, right? That will never change. But what we believe in terms of our belief. Okay, I just have to say this while I'm sharing with you about emails, my email started to ping. So what this belief, right? The belief that I must respond immediately, right? I must be behind in my work. That's why people are emailing me. If we positively reframe that, it could be, yes, there are many people to answer to, but I believe in myself. I'm a responsible person. I'll get to it. I will get to it. I trust myself that I'll get to it. So what is the consequence? I may not have an anxiety attack over the emails later on. Okay, so as you can see, when we reframe, it changes consequence. The belief and the consequence is all within your control. But before you can even control that, we need to know what it is, and we need to know that it's safe. Okay? Let's see the next slide. All right, so now you try. Let's see how you guys would reframe this. So we turn on the annotate, and you can also answer in the chat. How would you reframe these sentences? Please feel free to type them out. And meanwhile, while you're doing so, let's check in with Daniel. How would you reframe maybe my boss is staring, he must be talking about me?
Well, let me think. My boss is staring at me and he must be talking about me. Okay, like you say earlier on, I mean, if that's the case, then my thinking process will be maybe today I'm dressed very well. So my boss is admiring how I'm dressing, which is quite abnormal, but I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, it could be, right? That's
Yeah.
right. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Why can't I do anything right? How would you say that?
Why can't I do anything right? Okay. Probably I would say I'll think from a more positive way. Probably I'll ask myself, is there another way of doing it better? Okay. So I mean, I'm an engineer by training, so probably that comes to my mind more often, looking at solutions than
Yes.
looking at the problem itself. Yeah.
That's right. In fact, right, positive reframing could be helping us to come back to objectivity. And I like what we are seeing in the chat. I am slow, but I can still meet the deadline. That's right. We all work at different paces. I won't reach your deadline. I'm slower, but that's okay. How about this one? My family must resent me for being so busy all the time. I wonder, how might we reframe this? For number one, Yasmin is sharing, I am taking time to ensure that I'm doing my work well. That's right. That's a good reframe. Number two, why can't I do anything right? I need more support and help to figure this out. Absolutely. In fact, it's a legit question sometimes when you say, why can't I do anything right? It could be simply blaming yourself, or we can review it and we can see, okay, objectively, it's not that I'm not doing anything right, but what support do I need to make it right? So you see, when we are talking about reframing, right, this is really not just, it doesn't mean, oh, everything is all nice and rosy, but it also means that we are taking it into objectivity. We are making it concrete. In other words, right, we're telling our automatic negative thoughts, give me evidence, right? So if your automatic negative thought is saying, you're so slow like you, then we're asking, give me evidence. When have I busted a deadline? Never. Oh, then why am I saying that I'm slow? How do I positively reframe that? I may not work as quickly as somebody wants me to, but I do meet the deadlines in the end. Okay, so that's what we mean by reframing. Do try to do this on an everyday basis. We have included this in the resource package for you after this sharing. All right, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, now there are a few ways which you can regulate. Okay, so let's say we're not always in the frame of mind to really think about, okay, this is how I'm feeling, how do I positively review? Sometimes we're just so overwhelmed, and what's important is attending to our physical symptoms first. So let's say my heart is beating very fast, let's say my breath is quickening. I need to calm down before I can think. So here is what we can do. We do what we call grounding or coping techniques. So perhaps let's play this video. This is what we call box breathing. And if you can, let's try and follow along. Okay, over to you. Take a deep breath in. Hold your breath. Slowly breathe out. Hold your breath again. And breathe in. Hold. Exhale. Hold. Let's do this just one more time. In. Hold. And breathe out. And hold. All right, let's take a pause here. Thank you, Kay, for that. This is what we call box breathing. It's a form of deep breathing. There are many different types, and box breathing is really just one of them. But what it does, you may be wondering, hey, how come I need to hold my breath? See, when you breathe in and hold your breath, it holds the oxygen. Because what happens when we're panicking or when we're in anxiety, we are not actually taking in enough air, therefore not taking in enough oxygen. So when you take time to breathe in, hold, you're allowing the oxygen to circulate. And when we do this for about 2 to 5 minutes, it helps to bring down your nerves, calm yourself sufficiently before you're then able to engage in rational thought. All right? So let's go on to the next coping. Okay, before Kay plays this one, a little bit of background of what butterfly hugs are. You need to very specifically put your right hand over your left hand and hold yourself this way. Okay. Now, the reason why it's so specific, this is actually part of what we call EMDR therapy. Now, once again, we're not doing therapy with you, but this is something you can administer for yourself. When we do this, firstly, it's what we call a recovery position. So when you hold yourself like this, you find that there are times when you're feeling extremely stressed, extremely anxious, or just simply very, very overwhelmed. Right hand over left hand. Just take a few moments to breathe and hold yourself. You are keeping yourself in a safe position. It's also very reassuring because when we are feeling anxious, we don't want people touching us, right? So, but it's okay when you are holding yourself like that. Now, what butterfly hugs entail is it requires you to start tapping using your right hand. Start tapping from right to left, right to left, right to left, and do this continuously for about 5 minutes or until you feel better. There is a scientific explanation behind it. What studies have shown is that this physically transfers emotion to rational thought by transferring the sensations in the brain. Okay, so this is part of what we call EMDR. I forgot what EMDR stands for, something movement, something, but it is a format that is quite new in the psychology field. I think it's less than 20 years old, if I'm not wrong. So, okay, please go ahead and play the video.
So taking a deep breath in, when you reach the top, hold for just a moment, and then exhaling. Just let it come out, just natural as can be. And then just slowly start tapping. Just alternating sides, alternating the taps, knowing that whatever you choose is A-okay. If you'd like, you're also welcome to add a positive affirmation to this. It may be I am loved. It could be I can do this. It may be I am in a secure and safe place. Whatever seems to fit for what your need is right now. Feel free to just add that in and just repeat it to yourself in your head. And just remembering to keep tapping for as long as it's comfortable. If you need to go a little harder, you're welcome to. If it needs to be gentle. Again, just experimenting and see what fits for you right now. And you're welcome to do that. And go as short or as long as till you feel just a little bit calmer or until you feel that that's good enough for today.
All right, Kay, we can pause it. All right, so not to worry, these links, we will also put them inside the resource pack that we have created for you. All right, so if you notice, you mentioned that you can affirm yourself. That is actually the positive reframing. I can do this. I am safe. I am right. Okay? So these are affirmations. It's also a reframing of the situation that you're not in danger. Let's look at the next one. Okay, positive self-talk. I'll skip this video, but we will put it in the resource. It's pretty much what we shared earlier on how you can transform your negative automatic thoughts into something more rational, into something more positive. So we'll see that. Let's go on to the next one. Okay, so the last one that I'm introducing to you today, see the correct term really would be systematic desensitization, but in other words, use stress balls. It is always helpful to have stress balls around. Okay? So what does that do? I wonder if any of us, when we experience anxiety, right, or we are feeling very overwhelmed, breath starts to get shorter. For some of us, our hands might shake. Now, when we actually squeeze something, it kind of brings you back to where you are now. Okay, rather than kind of flying away with the emotions and the anxieties as you go along. There is something very concrete when we squeeze stress balls and release. One of the things that I find is very helpful is you squeeze really, really hard, you hold your breath, and all of a sudden, suddenly let go. It forces you to actually relax. So let's hear a little bit about how they are using stress balls in this.
You hold the stress ball in the palm of your hand. Clench your fist tightly and take a deep breath as you do so. Hold the hand tense for a few seconds, then relax your grip and exhale. This technique helps relax your muscles, which relieves the physical effects of stress. Try using it as a study break when writing a paper, or relax your hands and your mind.
All right, let's pause it. Okay, so it can be done in collaboration with breath, okay? Breathing. But sometimes when we feel overwhelmed, it's very difficult to breathe. So just focus on clenching and releasing, clenching and releasing. That does force a kind of relaxed state. All right. Okay, let's move forward. Okay, so now we're coming to the last part of today's talk, and let's talk about identifying whether or not yourself or other people around you might be in distress. Okay? It is important to note that when a person is in distress at work, it doesn't mean that they have a mental health disorder. In fact, when we are overwhelmed, when we have many, many things to attend to, it's actually really, really normal to feel anxious. Okay? So feeling anxiety doesn't equate a disorder. In fact, it's actually quite normal. But it is indicative that, yes, we might need to pay attention to ourselves. We might need to pay attention to how we've been coping with the stresses. So here are some possible triggers. So we might notice that ourselves or people around us might be having either social or family issues. Maybe you notice that this colleague doesn't seem to hang out with anyone, or is distancing themselves, or maybe become more distant than usual. Okay? Sometimes we might be going through significant events. So for example, things like someone's death anniversary, a divorce anniversary, things like that could be triggering. You see, work stress could always be, let's say, an 8 upon 10. But to somebody who is going through a significant event, that could be a 10 upon 10. Right? So we need to look out for people. We also maybe need to see whether there are any undiagnosed mental health conditions. So for example, what do I mean by that? If you notice a person has been exhibiting such signs for more than 6 months, 3 to 6 months, then that's not quite normal. Then we might want to maybe alert your RO and share that, okay, maybe this person might need a bit of support. So that's identifying possible triggers. Now let's talk about companioning feelings. You see, whenever we see someone at the workplace in distress, right, we tend to have a feeling like, I should help this person. I should say something. But the question is, do you always have to say something? Or can you simply sit with that person and just companion the feelings? We're not saying that, yeah, it's okay to feel that way, but we're saying you feel the way you feel and I'm with you. They'll companion them. They could be feeling things like sense of worthlessness, guilt, loneliness, and so on. By telling a person not to feel that way, it doesn't stop them from feeling that way actually. I mean, like, let's put it in context. Since when have you ever told somebody don't cry and they actually stop crying? Never happened. Ever. So what can we do? Take away that thought that I need to make it better for this person. You don't. Okay? You just need to companion. And maybe we ask, is there anything you need? What support do you need from me? And if they say nothing, that's fine. Just companion, just sit with them. It's okay. Maybe even a text, here for you if you need. That's enough. It's okay if they don't respond. Some things we might want to look out for, some physical traits, whether there are any differences in, their interests or in their appearance, whether they are gaining or losing weight too quickly, erratic behaviors. These are things that we want to have a look out for. We also want to observe their actions. Now, giving away of possession, that's actually quite dangerous. Why do I say giving away possessions might be dangerous? Daniel, what do you think? Colleague tells you, this is my very treasured comic collection. I'm giving it to you. Please keep it safe. What might that mean to you?
Okay, I mean, if it's so important to that person and he's letting it go, it, that's what does it really symbolize? Maybe he's giving up on something, and probably, and now he's starting to give things away, and that can be quite disturbing, especially if those things are very important to this person.
Exactly, that's right. Thank you for that. Maybe I should ask Teja. Teja, what do you think? People giving away important things, what comes to your mind?
From what I know, that's a common symptom of someone who is suicidal. So so if they think of ending their life, they will start giving away these valuable things. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I mean, like giving away our possessions are usually, for me, that rings very, very strong alarm bells, because it could be they want to make a drastic change in their life, perhaps. It could be they've given up on something, or perhaps they're even thinking of ending their life. It's possible. All are possible. Now, we observe these actions more to companion and raise alert if we feel like this person might be in danger. If we notice that there's withdrawal from self-mutilation, substance abuse, could be maybe the colleague is drinking more than usual, smoking more than usual, that could be indicative of feeling overwhelmed but not realizing it. You could see behavior changes, or maybe they verbally share certain things that they normally do not. So these are things where we don't want to say things like, don't worry, it will pass. That might not be the right thing to say at that point. In fact, if we're noticing all this, what do we do? Firstly, I would inform my RO. We would inform our RO straight up to say, okay, I have concern for this person. If you're not sure how to talk to this person, that's okay. But we would want to raise a little bit of alert to say, please look out for this person. Might he or she need support? Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so we're actually reaching the end of our sharing for today. And okay, this assignment, right? You all no need to hand in, don't worry, okay? What we've done is we've included like a resource package. We've included the positive reframing questions that we've gone through today during our talk. Okay, so, and we also would like to invite you to maybe for yourself think about a situation at work that was possibly triggering to you. We write down and we reflect on what happened, how did it happen? Now, what would you do, now that you know what you know from this talk, what would you do differently to cope emotionally? How would you use your ABCs to reframe the situation? So it's personal to you, so I won't ask anybody to share, but do try to do this on your own. You could also engage in an expressive arts activity. You could create an art piece, describe what's happening, what you'd like to change. How does it represent your emotional regulation? What do you need to do? In fact, you can scale it for yourself. What do I concretely need to do to achieve this feeling that I want to have? What support do you need? So you can do an expressive arts activity for yourself. Let's see what else we have. Okay, now, before we go, I would like to share with you, if you found what I've shared with you today interesting, we do have a few workshops that address not only your ABCs, we also talk more about how you can cope on an everyday basis. Because you see, not all of us can afford therapy, isn't it? But we can try different ways to cope for ourselves. So we have many workshops that prioritize mental health. The first one being our mental health survival tool. So this is a full-day workshop, SSG funded, meaning that basically we pay very little. So it's funded by the government. So what it is a full-day workshop, and depending on your age group, you can sign up for either Adulting 101, where you are young people starting out in the workforce and you would like to find out how to cope with expectations of yourself, other people's expectations of you, how to create relationships that last, okay? How to maintain relationships. So that's Adulting 101. You could also choose the sandwich generation, which we talked a lot about today. How do you manage all these different responsibilities and this life stage? without compromising your own physical and mental health. What goes into this toolkit? And of course, maybe we're looking at what's next, which is facing retirement. What shall I do after that? How do I cope emotionally going from being, for example, a director to being a retiree? It's a shift in identity. How do I cope with this change? So the mental health survival toolkit is divided into 3 parts, of which you can choose which one works best for yourself or your organization. We also have managing emotions through the expressive arts, something like what we did today, but a much more hands-on experiential approach to it, right? So we will be doing this face-to-face, and just like how we created what our feelings look like just now, it will be a deeper exploration into how to make sense of the emotion and what we want to change from there. Let's go on to the next slide. We also have other wellness workshops, such as mental wellness at the workplace. We talked about that earlier. We also have managing energy for optimal work performance. So what that means is that how do we, there's so many things that demand our time at work. How do we best manage our energy to make sure that we're able to deliver and yet feel rejuvenated and, energetic enough to do the things that we still want to do? So from a physical and a psychological perspective, how do we do so? So that will be managing energy for optimum work performance. We also have emotional intelligence and psychology. So this is actually a 4-day course, 2 days where you will go through emotional psychological basics. So what do we learn? We'll probably learn things such as your emotional competencies, your social and personal competencies, 6 seconds model, the difference between intellectual and emotional intelligence. So that's what we are. You will also learn about some psychology concepts to better understand work dynamics. Why certain things happen the way they do at work? How does this impact our communications at work? What difference will this make? So this would be EI and psychology.